Listen, we are so fucked. Astronomically fucked. No Shihiro, no Samura, no way to contact them, no way to let them in, no Hakari to teleport them in, and now the entire fate of this series, this verse, rests on these two fuckers duking it out. We are so fucked.
Like, I hate wasted potential. That shit crushes your spirit. It really does. It crushes your spirit.
There is a lot to talk about in this chapter here, but before we get into all that, I'd like to ask you all to follow me on Instagram. I've been dropping Jujutsu Kaisen and Kagurabachi artwork over there. Probably going to venture into some more manga artwork, so help the boy out with the side hustle. Anyways, this chapter picks up right up with Ikuto climbing out the floor like he's a zombie, but I want to draw your attention to Azumi's hands right here. These hands will become important very later. Yikes. Now, Mr. Pishaku here, turns out, he's a little bit more of a demon than we've been led to believe, and we've got to give him some credit, we've got to cut him some slack, and I really do think it was true what Yora was saying about him being the strongest Hishaku member. Maybe not so much in a physical strength-wise, but more so the fact that this dude's mentality is absolutely insane. He's insane. And he also heals like Wolverine, so that's a problem. As he tries to drive a knife into Ikuto's face here and ends up getting impaled by Ikuto's sand and also has his arm cut off. But he doesn't even care. He instead tries to grab the knife that has fallen and continues to attack Ikuto once more. And it's here where we get the full reveal of this dude's regeneration, and it's insanely fast. Now, I know a lot of you are already just furiously typing away in my comment section right now that this guy might actually be part of the Kiyonagi clan, which, if you don't remember, that is the clan that Shah is from. Remember Shah? Remember when Hokuzono was talking about Shah and had hair in the story? Good times. Now, I'm going to play contrarian here, and I'm going to disagree ever so slightly. The only reason that I'm disagreeing is very, very simple. The regeneration looks different, and that's it. And you could quite easily chalk this up to an art style change. As we're all aware, Hokuzono's art style has changed immensely since this series has begun. But I'd like for you guys to try and convince me in the comments otherwise, because I'm not quite convinced that he is a part of the Kiyonagi clan. But Ikuto does note how regeneration is actually the perfect ability for someone who is trying to buy time here. And at the same time, Kugara makes a comment about Pishaku's age being 17 and says, you know, he's still a kid, which he is. He's still a kid. But what I do like about this little interaction here is that Ikuto is the only person who can hear Kugara, because obviously, you know, schizophrenia and all that kind of stuff. And he is agreeing with what Kugara is saying, but from the perspective of Pishaku here, it just looks as if Ikuto is just patronizing him by sarcastically agreeing with him declaring that he's an adult. So it's very cool the way it's worded. However, Ikuto doesn't have much time to worry about that because he does collapse from exhaustion, because this man obviously just hasn't eaten properly in a long time. This dude's been on a hunger strike for a long time and is now facing the severe after effects of that decision. And Kugara tells him that he needs a 20-second break, which I'm going to take as a literal 20 seconds because I feel like sorcery obviously needs charge-up times the same way the Enchanted Blade. Like, I think back to when he fought Cloud Gouger, and Cloud Gouger had the charge up, and I imagine that if Ikuto didn't have a charge up, he would just be spamming his sorcery. So I imagine that this is going to be like an actual 20 seconds. So from the minute he says, I need 20 seconds, everything that happens up until a certain point only happens within 20 seconds. That's my headcanon here. Anyways, while Ikuto takes a power nap, I'd like to thank today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep are a long-time friend of the channel and have been instrumental in helping me get some shut-eye with the help of their handy-dandy masks. Since Baby Weeb has arrived, getting some shut-eye has been a lot easier. They've got a wide variety of masks available on their website, and I personally use the Pro, but I have dabbled with the weighted mask, which is great for those pesky little migraines. So be sure to check out Manta Sleep in the link below and use code WEAVE for 10% off of your order today. And once again, massive shout out to Manta Sleep for sponsoring today's video, long-time friends of the channel. Thank you very much. Once again, massive shout out to Manta Sleep for sponsoring the channel. Long-time friends of the channel over here. Anyways, you know who has woke up from their nap and sprung back into action? Kiri and fucking Hakari here. As Hakari teleports Kiri behind Pishaku here, and Pishaku ends up getting out of the way narrowly, but is caught by the next strike. A strike that cuts an arm and a hand off of Pishaku here, but before that strike can cleave all the way through Pishaku, he heals his hand and his arm and his body, trapping Kiri's blade inside of him. and then kicks Kiri away. Now, I know it's been mentioned before in the series, and I've talked about it before, but I really like the way Hokuzono makes a point of displaying people's shock and almost horror at fighting individuals who are simply willing to sacrifice body parts just to get the upper hand in the fight. So far in the series, we've only come across like 2 others, 3 now including Pishaku, who can just heal willy-nilly. That's Shaw, Samura, and Pishaku here. So as for everyone else in the series, getting injured is a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Losing body parts is even worse, and I think it takes a little while for them to get fixed up here, because even Yora lost an arm and had to go and get fixed up. So if you're fighting someone who's willing to trade an arm or a foot or a few fingers just to get the upper hand on you, you might as well just be fighting the fucking devil himself from the fucking Bible. Anyways, Hakari has made use of his dual sorcery here, summoning a blade and then using Iso to propel it towards Pishaku, who, again, narrowly dodges and it grazes his shoulder as Kiri appears behind him, laying in wait on the blind side here, and cuts his head clean the fuck off. It reminded me a lot of Yuta and Kenjaku, personally. However, this is where things get really, really grisly. Pishaku's body continues to move without his head, like an ant or a dragonfly or something. He ends up ripping the blade that Kiri had placed in his chest here, and he throws it at Kiri, but as she blocks the blade, he then catches his head, and with his head in his hand, says the following: "If Yora says something is white, even if it's black, it's white. I'm the strongest Hishaku. Yora said so, so it has to be true." Now, I saw a tweet the other day comparing Makima to Yora, and asking just who is the biggest groomer. Now, all jokes aside, it made me have a startling realization that Yora's sorcery might actually be control-orientated. Like, just think about this for a second, walk with me here. Yora wants the Swordmaster dead, right? But he has also been collecting these enchanted blades and handing them out to the guys in the Hishaku. Meaning, if they are contracted to these enchanted blades, when Yora kills the Swordmaster, if he kills the Swordmaster, they will then all die. Meaning, Hirahiku, he'll die, he'll pass away, and whoever else has got other swords will pass away. Meaning, he's setting them up for failure. So as far as we're aware, Yora's plan is a selfish, self-serving plan for the rest of the Hishaku. We have zero idea why this group is following him. We have zero idea as to each individual's motives as to why they were following him. So that begs the question, how's this all playing out? How does this work? I know it's crackpot theory, but I do think there is a reason he's made it this far. And planning and preparation is definitely a part of it. Anyways, speaking of Yora, Ikuto senses the presence of flowers blooming and the Shinoichi getting closer, and he jumps into action, pushing Hakari and Kiri back with a wall of black sand here, as Hokuzono delivers what I can only describe as a Fujimoto level page turn, because Yora appears, and with him, flowers bloom as the 3 men who were standing in front of Pishaku perish. And it's here we're treated with multiple reveals. 1, Pishaku's name is actually Yukisada, and he might actually just be legitimately the strongest member of the Hishaku, given what we've just seen. What he's just displayed here is actually astronomical levels of fuck around find out. 2, Yora is now carrying the hand of Asami, and he looks a lot more composed also. So I'm going to say this, just for copium's sake. We didn't see a body of Asami, so he's totally alive, and I will continue huffing copium. But my logical brain, as I've been talking about for a while now, I'm almost convinced that this guy, Asami, is dead. He's gone. He's out of the picture now, and potentially even Uraha and Natsuki may have also perished too, because all 3 of those guys were not in a good state when we last saw them last, you know? So I think it's worth preparing for the worst, that those guys are fucking gonskis here. Now, Yora then turns his attention to Hakari, Ikuto, and Kiri here, who are stood behind this wall, and he tends to finish them off, and then decides, no, we're not going to do that. Enough wasting time, and leaves, which I will say is an extremely big fuck up for him on his part in the future, because I just know that's going to come back to bite him in the arse. However, the chapter does start to come to a close with not 1, not 2, but almost 3 pages of silence as we see the cold, empty, flowered halls of the Kaminabi HQ, and nothing but death and flowers is growing, and until he finally arrives atop the prison holding the Sword Saint captive. Meaning, in chapter 100, we are going to see these guys duke it out, which brings me neatly around to my opening statement of this video. We are so fucked. The fate of this series rests solely on the victor of the upcoming battle. Whoever wins this fight, we lose. We have no Shihiro, no Samura. Shiba and Hiyuki have no way to get into the base right now. No way of contacting them to let them know that the Kaminabi HQ is going crazy right now. Everything is setting this up to be a villain victory. And I feel like this is going to be one of those things where it's going to be a part 2 type scenario. You know, we get to chapter 100, we see this fight, either Yora or the Sword Saint dies, whoever it is, and it's Kagurabachi part 1 concluded, you know, into the next side of this. But yeah, this series has been incredibly hyped right now. Anyways, that is everything from me. Sorry for the shorter video here. It was a very action-packed chapter. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, support me on Patreon, all of that good shit. And I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.